Welcome back to the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling, guys. We're talking today about what AEW's fall is going to be like. We saw this past week on Dynamite, things were set up quite nicely for the fall months, which is very important to AEW as their TV deal will be coming up pretty soon, and they need to impress the network executives. So we had a lot of returns, some really good action, and we did have AEW still trying to distinguish themselves, probably now more important than ever, from WWE. So we're going to talk about that in this video. But first, I want to remind you guys that I always have free goodies down for you in the description box below. You can get free stocks from Webull, free stocks from Robinhood. Could be worth anywhere up to $1,800. We are in a down period in the market right now. So if you, this is the time to get in. You don't want to get in when it's going up. You want to get in when it's down. So when it goes up, you make money. Most people do it the wrong way. So don't do it the wrong way. Check it out now if you haven't already and see if any of those links would help you out. And now let's get on to the review of AEW Dynamite and where AEW might be going in the fall. So off the top, the big news obviously is the return of CM Punk at the end of the AEW Interim, I know Moxley hates that word, but the Interim AEW World Championship match with Chris Jericho, Lionheart Chris Jericho, which was, I will say, a far better match than the one that they had 2.5 years ago. God, it's crazy to think that that Revolution show was 2.5 years ago. Man, time has... When you get older, time goes by really, really fast. But this match was way better than that one. I had absolutely enjoyed this match. I think it's one of Jericho's finest in-ring performances in his AEW career. Same thing with Moxley here. They did get to a finish that was satisfying for me. Moxley does get the choke out, tap out from Chris Jericho, retaining the interim AEW championship. Of course, didn't follow the beatdown with all of the JAS and some of the Blackpool Combat Club. And a couple other people, including Eddie Kingston, ran down and got involved in the fray. But the numbers advantage was in the favor of the JAS until Cult of Personality played, and out comes a very Wolverine looking. I always love this look on CM Punk when he does the Wolverine look. Well, not quite. He's not quite the Wolverine look, but his Wolverine look was one of my favorite looks that Punk had back in WWE. But Punk comes out to the ring to help clear house. He does a little bit of some loose punches on the JAS, but enough to get him out of dodge and get him out of the ring. And then it winds up with him back to back and then face to face with Jon Moxley. And Moxley flips him off and bumps into him and walks out. Now, I think this is probably going to be the closest we're going to get to that Stone Cold. Because Moxley, he's in the vein of Stone Cold Steve Austin. There's a lot of Stone Cold in Moxley's character, even though Moxley is his own man, though. But this is kind of the closest we're going to get to that old Stone Cold CM Punk match. But this one's got a lot of history to it. CM Punk and Jon Moxley. If we go back to the beginning of the Shield, some of you may not remember this or may not have even known this, but the Shield, which was Jon Moxley, then as Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins, their debut in WWE was to protect loosely in their loose affiliation with CM Punk. And now we fast forward all these years later, and here is Jon Moxley fully developed into his own man, going head-to-head and face-to-face with CM Punk. Both of them AEW champions. One is interim, one is legacy, and we will find out clearly at All Out who is the official AEW World Champion. We have to bring up MJF in this because, again, the social media, MJF's presence is gone. There is no sign of MJF, hasn't been for weeks. Nobody knows what's going on with him. He's remained hush-hush. Tony Khan hasn't said much about it, but the suspicion is now, and I think most of us are right about this in the wrestling community, that once CM Punk regains and retains the World Heavyweight Championship in AEW, or the World Championship in AEW, it's not a heavyweight title, but AEW's world title, I would not be surprised if at the end of the match we see MJF, or if MJF shows up at some point in the future, because I do suspect that the Arthur Ashe show coming up, the Grand Slam show coming up in September, might either MJF is going to be challenging for the championship there, or he will be making his return at that show. So a big fall plan, if that's the plan right now for AEW. And it doesn't matter that, maybe we know what the plan is. The story is so good, I just want to see it play out, even though I kind of got an idea where it's going to be. And a lot of times predictability is not a bad thing. When the predictability is, we get to see this, I can't wait. And that's where we are right now with this whole CM Punk, Jon Moxley, and MJF situation. But that's not the only return that was hinted at. Of course, we had the Undisputed Elite make a slight return the week before. They did the big turn on the Young Bucks, and now the Undisputed Era, I guess we'll still call them that for now on until they come up with a different name. They were driven off by Hangman Adam Page. So, of course, with the Trios tournament coming up, we got to say, oh, well, now there's the Trios tournament coming up. Is this going to lead into something with Hangman and the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, who should be making his in-ring return pretty soon? As we all suspected, the Young Bucks did approach on this episode of Dynamite Hangman Adam Page, he was with the Dark Order, so I was like, okay, he's not joining with the Bucks. They approached him about being their tag team partner in the 6-man tag team tournament and in the Trios tournament, and Hangman declined. He said he was going to throw his weight behind the Dark Order and whatever combination of the Dark Order that's going to be. So everybody immediately kind of goes, okay, so now definitely Kenny Omega. It's been rumored. Tony Khan said that they were only going to do the Trios titles when Kenny was going to come back to AEW. So it seems like we're well on that path, and it's coming up very soon. Next week on Dynamite, the Young Bucks will be taking on they're not Los Ingobernables, or I forgot what the name of. The Los Ingobernables de Elite is what I'm calling them. Andrade's group, along with Dragon Lee. Now keep this, or Ryu Lee, however you want to pronounce it. I thought that was his name now, but apparently they're calling him Dragon Lee right now. But Dragon Lee is going to be teaming up with Rush and Andrade to take on the Young Bucks and most likely Kenny Omega. That match, just that match alone, is enough to get me excited. Of course, the return of Kenny Omega is going to be a big deal in AEW. And looking at the brackets, it's almost clear they're on opposite sides of the tournament, that the Dark Order, we might wind up with them in the finals against Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, and that's going to be a lot of drama. They did this before. They remember that tournament they had for the Eliminator tournament, or whatever, the number one contendership tournament, and Kenny was on one side and Hangman was on the other side, and we all kind of knew it was going to lead to Kenny versus Hangman in the finals. It kind of seems like that's going to be the same thing here. But one other thing about this tournament that I'm very interested in coming in the end of summer or the fall here is that if you noticed, Aussie Open and Will Ospreay, the United Empire, are in the same side as the Elite and Kenny Omega. And why is this an issue? Why is this exciting? Because as you've probably seen, especially if you subscribe to my channel, because I've talked about it a few times, Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega have been having an online beef for quite a few weeks now. And the idea of, first off, the idea of Aussie Open and Will Ospreay versus the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega is awesome in itself. But we'll see. We don't know. They may throw some curveballs in there, and that whole thing, I think, is going to lead to something else. I'm wondering, I still think that's probably more of a Wrestle Kingdom match over in New Japan with Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay as opposed to being an AEW thing. But who knows? We'll see where this all goes. There are some pieces of this puzzle that aren't quite clear yet, but right now it does seem that we can guarantee that Omega is coming back. There's going to be a conflict with Hangman Page and the Dark Order. And don't forget, Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and Bobby Fish are still lurking around. And once they're cleared to wrestle, they're going to get involved in this Trios thing. So this Trios title actually probably could be one of the most exciting championships, even though, yeah, AEW's got a lot of titles. But it could be, they're setting it up to be one of the most intriguing, entertaining, and exciting championships in the company. And I mentioned before, this is a big time period. Everybody's talked about this. AEW's TV deals coming up pretty soon. They're going to have to re-up. Now, there's a little concern because Discovery has been slashing budgets left and right. And a lot of people are saying that might not hold or bode well, I should say, for All Elite Wrestling, either getting the same deal that they're getting now or especially, hopefully, getting more money for the TV deal. But given the fact that Rampage is an okay ratings grabber for them, and Dynamite is one of their top shows on the entire network between TNT and TBS collectively. Tony Khan's a smart negotiator. Maybe he can get a better deal for AEW. We don't know what's going on, obviously, because we're not in the boardrooms and we don't know what the executives are thinking. But I would note that it is very important for them to know what's going on. And I suspect, because that MJF pipe bomb happened while the network executives were there, that Tony Khan might have clued them in and go, hey guys, we're going to do this thing with this guy MJF. He's one of the most popular guys on our show. We're going to do this whole thing that's going to, the fans won't know whether it's real or fake, and we're going to do this whole crazy thing. We're going to pay it off in the fall, and it should be big ratings. I can't guarantee you, but I would not be surprised if that's what the conversation was had on that night the pipe bomb was laid by MJF. Again, remember, the network executives, if I can get that out, the network executives were there in attendance at that show. So while there's a lot of interesting going on in WWE right now with the change in regime over there and WWE actually making better shows, I will be having my 30-Day Raw Challenge video coming up this weekend as I review this past week's episode of Monday Night Raw. But there's been a lot of focus on WWE, but AEW, especially with this Dynamite this past week, which is a really good episode, including the match with Darby and Brody King, which that fantastic finish that they pulled. That was one of the smoothest, coolest finishes I've seen to a match this year, and all the other stuff that went on that show, them trying to hype up Ricky Starks, them giving Hobbs something else to do, disbanding Team Taz, Hook's got the FTW Championship, we got Jungle Boy and Christian's feud that actually is working pretty well. So there's a lot of stuff going on in AEW that they are continuing to kind of get back to the momentum that they had in the winter and in the spring. That the summer kind of lackluster, except for the Forbidden Door show, which the build to that was a little bit lackluster, but the show was great. So we'll see what happens in the fall, but I expect the next couple of months in AEW are going to be quite newsworthy. But I want to know what you guys thought about this. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until next time, I will see you guys here as we continue reviews. I will be continuing my reviews of the G1 Climax. We're almost at the end over there in New Japan. It's gone by kind of quick this year. And I'll be having a tier list, which is an idea I stole from all the other tier lists on YouTube. But we will be doing a tier list in the final week of the G1 Climax and putting in the tiers of all the wrestlers, all the 28 wrestlers in the G1, whether or not they were S tier or bottom tier. We're going to be doing that, and that's probably going to be a live stream too, so stay tuned to this channel. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when that video goes up, so you can be part of the live chat, because I'll have some of you guys voting on where these guys rank in the tier list for the G1 Climax this year. So I'm excited about that and all the other stuff that we have going on in the world of pro wrestling and sports entertainment. I'll see you guys here for that. Have a good day.